Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Esoteric and our continuing series on the MiSTer FPGA DE10 Nano project. And I got a really fun, exciting, and unexpected episode for you guys today because over the weekend, FPGAZumSpass, or as you know him, Robert, updated the Nintendo 64 core. Now he said he was hoping to have one retail game running by Christmas. Well, I'm not sure what your calendar says, but mine says July, and we are here today with the first retail Nintendo 64 game running on this core. Nobody expected it, but holy hell is it amazing. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But last time we did a preview of the Nintendo 64 core, we had some varied demos that were not retail games running. That has changed today because if you try to load up Namco Museum on the current Nintendo 64 core, you are going to actually be able to play a game. Now the graphics are not 100% and there's absolutely no audio whatsoever because Robert has not done anything really on the audio side. But this is a retail game that was released for the Nintendo 64 and it is currently playable on the core. Now the question is, why is this possible and why are other games not loading, which I'll show you very shortly. The entire reason for something like this, and it's not surprising this is the first retail game to run, is because look at the screen. Pac-Man really isn't using any of the actual video hardware on the Nintendo 64. It's not running polygons or anything like that. This is more likely than not executing just off the CPU, which Robert has in fact finished up the coding for, and it does pass all of the diverse tests for the Nintendo 64. That is why something like this is working. It is a proof of concept that Nintendo 64 games are possible on MiSTer, and that it took a lot less time than Christmas 2023 to see the first playable game. Now of course Pac-Man is definitely something everybody has played before, but it does show proof that the Nintendo 64 is possible on MiSTer, and Robert is doing an amazing job getting this core all strung together. And Namco Museum on the Nintendo 64, obviously not one of those games that's synonymous with the system. We're not seeing stuff like Super Mario 64 running yet, but it does have a diverse list of games and they're all basically executing. And because this is using the CPU, it is showing that everything is working as expected. Because outside of the graphical glitches on the left and right hand side of the screen, those odd colors, when you're actually looking at all the sprites on screen right now, all of the colors are exactly as you would expect them to be. So that hardware that has been coded in FPGA for MiSTer so far is working exactly as is expected. And it's going to be so much fun to follow along with this and see some other games start to work. Now just because this is working on MiSTer does not in any way, shape, or form mean we're going to be playing more games in a week or two. This is a very rudimentary game. So something like Perfect Dark, Super Mario 64, any of those games that you kind of think about when you think about the Nintendo 64 as a console, those might not be until Christmas. Those might not be until next year. Just because one game is running doesn't mean the core is 25%, 50%, or even 80% done. Because there's so much hardware on the Nintendo 64 that Robert has not even started coding for yet. We really don't know when those experiences are going to be coming. And a big thanks this week to Andy D for helping me with these captures. While he was capturing the footage and I was doing this voiceover, I spent the weekend in the emergency room with a kidney stone. Not fun, 10 out of 10, don't recommend. Moving on to pole position here, this is one demo that seems to have a little bit of an issue because you'll see here as the game starts, it kind of blips in and out of existence, but when we actually start the game, you're going to see prepare to qualify. That car is going to go forward into the screen and then the core is going to hang. So not everything in the Namco Museum is working perfectly. There's definitely going to be some things to experience, and it's not that I'm recommending everyone run and try to play this core right now. Trying to load up Donald Duck on the core, you're going to get the splash screen and then it's going to freeze, but you can see some things are trying to load, and that is the most exciting part. You can see the real-time work Robert is putting into this. Something like Dr. Mario 64, this garbage on the screen that you're going to see is actually the code trying to execute. It's just not working because a lot of the hardware it's looking for is currently not in the core whatsoever. But it's kind of fun to think about that from a technical perspective, that you can get some games like Namco Museum to run, even though half the hardware that would be in Nintendo 64 is not coded into the core whatsoever. Kind of makes me wonder if you just took those chips off a motherboard, if you could still get Namco Museum to boot, or if there'd be some electrical issue there. As you try to load up Rayman 2 here, The Great Escape, this is not a game that's going to run currently, but you will see that it tries to at least start to run. It must be that at least for the splash screen, a lot of what it needs to draw onto the screen is not done by any of the GPU hardware on the Nintendo 64, because you do get that Ubisoft screen there saying Rayman 2, and then of course the core freezes from there. But if you try to load something like StarCraft 64, you'll see in the background here, it's going to flash again. You're going to say that it's Enhancement Pack Enhanced, and you're going to going to see that it has rumble pack support as well. The ROM loading is a touch slow. I'm sure that'll get a little faster as we get closer to a released core, but you can still see it drawing graphics to the screen and at least trying to execute that code. And that's some of the most fun things to see here. It's amazing to see something like Wave Race 64. It'll throw up the Nintendo 64 logo and at least get that far. And I'm sure in the next month, 6 months, a year, we're going to be playing stuff like Wave Race on this core. Now, of course, there's other different demos here. A lot of them are very rudimentary, but they do show code execution, like this text scrolling screen here. It is nothing to look at whatsoever, but it shows that some of these CPU-based demos are 100% working. And we went through the last video. I showed you the different results Robert got from those different tests where it checks all of the different states the CPU can do, and 100% of those were passing. Or something like this here, it is not going to run completely. You're going to get this very mangled Nintendo 64 logo with the wrong colors, but it is proof that different things are executing. And probably my favorite demo, not sure what it's actually supposed to be doing, but Psycho here puts up some of the best looking colors on the screen. It is just kind of like a magenta neon pastel rainbow of lines on your monitor. Exactly what it's supposed to be doing, I'm not 100% sure, but it does show everything is working currently that you could try to test on it. You'll see here, mangled screen, but it looks so much fun. And hey, Robert did add audio after I did this video, so go ahead and listen for 30 seconds and I'll be right back. But moving back to Namco Museum, something like Dig Dug, outside of a few little graphical corruptions, this pretty much looks like Dig Dug, and it's definitely playing exactly like you could expect Dig Dug to play. And that's the thing. This is not a Nintendo 64 game, it is a Nintendo 64 cartridge running old arcade games, and that is a lot of the reason why this is running. All of the code is executing from the CPU. It'll be interesting to see the 3D games run because that is a lot of the different chipset in the Nintendo 64. SGI developed those with Nintendo, and those just aren't in the core quite yet. But my favorite part about Robert's development process is he keeps everyone updated of what's going on. He's constantly spreading new information and sharing new details he learned from the development. So I do expect to be able to update the next Nintendo 64 video, hopefully in a couple weeks or maybe a month, when more things may become playable. But again, just playing a Nintendo 64 game on the core is incredible because for the longest time everyone thought this would be impossible, the same way that they thought the PlayStation 1 and Sega Saturn core would be impossible as well. Obviously Robert proved us that the impossible is definitely possible when he's working on it, because the PlayStation 1 core on MiSTer is one of the best developed cores around on the system, and in my opinion better than original hardware. But if you never played Dig Dug before, it's definitely a fun game and you can play it on your MiSTer today. But leave me a comment down below and tell me what one game on the Nintendo 64 you're looking forward to playing the most. For me, it's 100% Bomberman Hero. But it's just incredible to think that Robert announced this core just a few short months ago, and the first retail game is already running, and I think it's hilarious. He said his goal was to have this out by Christmas, because it is currently 88 degrees in my studio right now as I'm recording this with no air conditioning, and I am dripping in sweat. The joke being it is definitely not December weather outside. Robert did the classic under-promise and over-deliver with the Nintendo 64 core by beating his own goal by 5 months, and I can't wait to see what comes next. It's so much fun to follow along with these developments, and I know a lot of you enjoy it as well, so I'm going to start doing a Nintendo 64 testing series as cores get updated and more things run. But leave me a comment down below and tell me if you're interested in seeing those, because everyone seems to really love the Sega Saturn stuff. I don't know how far we are off from actual 3D games running on the core. With Robert, it could be next week, it could be next month, it could be next year. As always, don't set an expectation in your own mind. It will be ready when it's ready, and I can't wait to see that. But the fact that we can even play one retail game right now is incredible. But that's what's currently going on with the Nintendo 64 on MiSTer. You can play one retail game right now, and if you enjoy Dig Dug, it's the one I recommend, probably the best on the entire collection. But I can't wait to see what the back half of 2023 brings for MiSTer in general, and specifically the Nintendo 64 core, because I think this is one of the most important cores, because I will say trying to play Nintendo 64 on an LCD TV without a lot of mods is not a fun time. Short of that, I'll be back next week with more MiSTer content, but we are done and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.